Uh-oh, that told me you're recording.
Here it is, right? Yeah, no, yeah. This is the moment of truth.
Yeah, it is.
So tonight we have with us Gary Grimes. Gary had a very long career at Philips Electronics, designing a lot of consumer electronics, probably some of the boom boxes that we've owned over the years, or component systems that we might have owned over the years. Certainly, I know I had a whole bunch of CDs in my life at one point, so I know I owned that much, and cassette tapes. Gary got to start at GM, worked there briefly, went to Philips, and then took a 1 year, almost a sabbatical, as it were, from Philips to come work at Timex. It really wasn't a sabbatical. He'll tell you the details. But he landed at Timex at exactly the right time to bring all the stuff that he had learned and all the stuff that he had been practicing to Timex, to their design. And this is why the 2068 is, and certain other products are so different from the 1000 and the 1500. And so with that, I will let Gary tell us his story.
Wow. I don't know where anybody want me to start.
Start at your beginning. Where
Yeah, I was an automotive guy. I mean, I thought that was my destiny. I wanted to be automotive ever since I was chasing down the cars in the 50s, trying to see the new designs before the public saw them in the car dealers back when I was 13, 14 years old. But in college, I thought I'd be designing automotive. I concentrated my portfolio on automotive, and I got it into General Motors. They came the last weeks of school. They come into the office, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, and they recruited several of us. 3 or 4 went to Chrysler, 1 went to Ford, and I went to GM. Well, I got disenchanted with GM. I got disenchanted. I'm sure it would have been any automotive. I found it too political. You didn't have control over your design. Management took it over, and so I ended up leaving, and I ended up being at those days, professional dropout. And I went to a hippie photo school in Denmark, of all places. And from there, I ended up getting a job in Copenhagen with a firm called Act and Beyond. And I was there for 2 years in Copenhagen. And then I came back to the States and got a job at GE I was trying to get into GE Electronics because I'd worked there as a design intern when I was in college, but they had just filled their positions, and so they referred me to GE Medical Systems. I went there and hated it. And I saw an ad in ID magazine for Philips, and okay, back to Europe. And so I ended up back to Europe, and there I had a very good, successful career with the audio department. And then I got married, had a child, and I wanted to return to the States. I thought that was mine. And yeah, so I would carry around a portfolio with me when I was traveling. You never know what you're going to run into. And I would always network. And so I was going to network with a friend of mine, and he was working at Timex. And so I went over to Timex, and he wanted to meet in the office, and I go in the office. And then around the corner, I knew John, and around the corner comes another colleague that I used to know that worked with me in Philips. And out of the main office comes the design director, and I knew him from my internship at GE in their audio group. So we went out to lunch, and I showed him the portfolio, and he said, "We don't have a position right now, but there's one coming up." And so I went back to Europe, and I wrote him a very nice thank you letter and told them I'm very interested. And then in September, they sent me an offer. And then by January 1, I was working at Timex, and they had been working on their computers for quite a while. And so they needed very fast work. And so I was put to the test right away. And for me, when I see the results of what I did, it spins off straight away from what I was doing in audio. The form language, the color silver comes from my audio stuff that I was doing. And
when Gary, when you say you were started January, was that 90 or 83?
Yes, January 1,
Okay.
83, first day of 83. And yeah, you can see on the sketches that by the end of the month, I was homing in on the proposal, which ended up being the final solution. The thing is, I don't have what I would consider is a final rendering of this. I only have all these thumbnail sketches. Now, all these thumbnails, as you go through them, I talk to myself on my thumbnails. I remind myself that something's good or something's bad, and put this together, put that together. It's all talking to myself. And this board 4, the bottom right-hand corner there, ends up being what I went on to propose as the final solution. And I wish I had a final rendering of this, but I don't have one. I had to have made one. But from that, then you go to the model drawing, and from there they make a model out of it. And then we had the TS 1500, which is basically, it was just a color and graphics project. And then they came with the keypad, which these are foam core mock-ups of it. I don't have any sketches, I just went straight into making 3D mock-ups to try to sell the concept. And they picked one of them, and then they put it into and made a design patent out of it. I didn't do the drawings. They did it themselves. And if you see the design patents, they show those, you'll see that they chose one and made it. And then Timex wasn't really having a good, they were having, maybe overextended themselves. They were having a bit of troubles. And in June even, I was having Philips calling me back up. Do you want to come back? And I said, no, we're committed. We're committed to the USA. We're going to stay. But by September, they called again. And then we really thought about it. And yeah, we sat down and made a list of advantages and disadvantages of each location. And we both decided to go back to Europe. And back to Europe, it was good. It was better. Well, because I found out later that Timex, by springtime came in, they laid off one of their designers. Okay, that means there's 2 guys gone, me, who voluntarily left, and the guy they laid off. So they're already downsizing. So for me, I took my future in my hands and I left. And it was a good, Philips is a good place. After I did a couple of years stint in the video group, but then after 3 years, then I had the audio group. I ended up being the manager for the audio group, portable audio, the one I had just left 4 years earlier. I ended up being the manager for it. And then came the shifting of product management, and they moved to Vienna, Austria. That's where our production centers were. And so I got to move to Vienna for 3 years for an expat. And then 3 years later, they moved to Hong Kong. And well, I didn't go to Hong Kong, but I did get shifted to Singapore for 5 years. And there was audio systems. Didn't really like audio systems as much as I like portable audio. And then I got shifted to USA again. because I said that I wanted to be at the end of my career, I wanted to be in USA. And I ended up in Atlanta. And there were some learning curves there because the drawing board was not existing in Atlanta. It was alias design. So I had to learn how to use alias. I was about, what, 55 years old or so. And I had to prove that I could, being an old guy, I could pick up how to do alias. And so the drawing board is gone, markers.
Could I ask a quick question about that?
Yeah.
So about what time period were you going from a drafting board and drafting to going to alias?
It would be 99 when, yeah, well, our engineering department in Vienna, I believe they were into computers, and I expressed that I'd like to get into computers because they had so much control over it, but it wasn't even there. We didn't even have a Mac on our table. In Singapore, we got a Mac, but the guy I was working with and we went then and did our drawings in Photoshop and Illustrator. But that was as close we got to computer-aided design. It was still old school stuff. But in Atlanta, it was alias. I mean, it was really good stuff. I mean, you could really get accurate with that stuff. And because we had to Rhino, it was a cheaper program. And one of the guys in the studio used to say that we comparing Rhino and alias. Rhino was like designing with oven gloves on because it's so inaccurate. And alias was right. I mean, it was so accurate. I mean, I would get sometimes one of the projects of years, I would get work from another studio that was done in Rhino, and half the surfaces are missing and inaccurate stuff. I have to spend so much time correcting what they had sent me. But no, it was 99 for me. But we had a studio in Knoxville, Tennessee that used to show up in our meetings years earlier, and they were already in alias. They had been in alias for a long time, but our studios weren't. So it was I enjoyed it, but I missed I'll call it romance of the romancing your pencil and markers and bringing your drawing to life. Whereas computer-aided design, you can set up your lights in a setting, and then you can keep that. And then the next project you do, you take the same lights and drop it into your setting, and then just assign your surfaces, your colors, and your textures, and whatever you want, and hit the render button and go have a cup of coffee. And it's basically what. Yeah, it was interesting, but it was something missing because all these renderings. It was, yeah, you couldn't have a cup of coffee. It didn't get drawn unless you were at your table.
So I guess, Gary, you're really responsible then for the new Timex look, right? Since the 2068, you obviously designed that.
Yeah.
And I know there's some, you may be able to lead some or allude to some more information that the head of Timex at the time actually misspoke the name of that, right? Because initially it was supposed to be the Timex 2072, right? And he called it the 2068. And I guess somebody was like, hey, that's supposed to be the 2072. And he says, well, I like 2068 better. So I think that, did you hear anything about that, especially since you were in the, no,
I didn't. No, that must have been, product management area. Yeah.
okay. Because you were really, I mean, in the whole scheme of things, weren't there that long, but you really had a profound impact because obviously you did the 1500 as well.
Well, the 1500, but that's only color and graphics. Huh? The 1500 is basically what the Spectrum.
Right. And you redesigned the case a little bit?
No.
Oh, you didn't have anything to do with that one?
Yeah, the color and
Okay.
the graphics of the keypad.
Okay.
And the color of the background, just the color and graphics of that product. I did not touch the cabinetry on that one. No.
Okay.
no.
And then I guess I'm trying to go through like the 2050 modem. Did you have anything to do with the design of the chassis or the cabinet of that?
Oh, the 2050 modem? Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know that kind of went with the whole stack of things,
No,
right?
that-
With
that was-
the bus expansion unit, and you may actually have designed that as well, because I know the pictures that they kind of showed.
Well, I think they went on their own on that one because they had the modem, which had a certain profile to it. And
Mhm.
from what I've seen in the pictures, it looks like they took the profile of it and then they just enlarged it or moved it to, it wouldn't have been very difficult to do that. I mean,
Okay.
you
And then
just-
so you had you probably didn't have anything to do with the little micro drives. I think they called them the 2060s if they would have ever come out here. They were basically redesigned. Well, they're the same guts as the micro drives that Sinclair had,
Oh,
but they were the same kind of design
oh,
style.
no, I
right?
didn't.
Right?
Well,
Okay.
no, I didn't have those. No, no.
Okay.
Gary did do the 1510 cartridge,
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Right.
Yeah.
and then the design of the cartridges, right?
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah. And that cartridge, when I was at Philips, I had the opportunity to do, they could come out with a cassette tape, just a tape, and they
Yeah.
wanted to have a new case for it to express. And so I got to do that, a cassette tape for Philips. And that had those little ridges on it that comes on the cartridge from
I
Timex.
think I know exactly what you're talking about, Gary. That's hilarious.
Oh, the casing for the
Case of
compact cassette.
Yeah, I remember those.
And it has the ridges, right, right.
Yeah,
right.
and those ridges, yeah, that it was TDK who had the ridges originally, I think.
Yeah.
And I picked I have to say that. I mean, I picked it up and put it onto the cassette that I made for Philips, and then I utilized it into the cartridge for Timex. Yeah, to give it a bit of
Okay.
texture rather than, yeah, to give it on both sides something rather than just plain cabinetry.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Gary, what you didn't mention is that you had no experience designing computer stuff before Timex. You
Oh,
came into
that's
this-
why you can see when I do those system things, I'm lining them up like you would audio components. Because, and I think, I don't know, what if I had had a little bit more time to do, if I'd been there several months earlier, to do and develop myself along with the people that were doing the circuitry and the software and you might have been able to go through a couple of iterations of different things and make models of them. And they didn't have time for that. They just had to hit and run and go. And that's all I had to do. I didn't have time for a lot of experimenting. And yeah, it's a very hard edge, I think. Yeah, I could have been more rounded like the Spectrum was, or yeah, but yeah, this chose this direction here.
Well, honestly, Gary, I mean, I don't have any qualms about the design. I think it's a perfectly fine design for what it is. It's, it's unlike, I noticed one of your drawings there said, well, it's kind of too much like the 99.4A, because you had the little cartridge thing on the side there.
Yeah.
But, I didn't really, other than seeing that from you, I didn't really think that when I saw the 2068, it really didn't bring to mind a 99.4A to me. But that's an interesting, observation that you made when you were just kind of throwing designs around for that particular unit. But so yeah, I mean, this is really great to meet you. Because I know the guy that did the Spectrum, right? And I think a lot of the Sinclair stuff, he just recently passed away. What was his name? Ian? I think Ian something. He was an industrial designer. He's the one that designed, most of Sinclair's products.
Oh,
And
I love their products.
yeah, and he had a Kickstarter, right, with the Spectrum Next, right? And he actually was involved with that, right? Just right before he passed away.
Rick Dickinson.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And so he actually had a hand in the latest, I guess, model, which is basically just a massaged version of the, like the Spectrum 2. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but, so he was kind of in your shoes as far as being in industrial design, right? And so, but it sounds like your stint in the computer world was very short-lived.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah.
And I'm not, I can't say I'm a big Philips fan. I don't have anything against or for them, but I do know you were talking about boom boxes at the beginning, and cassette tapes. I'm a big TDK fan from back in the 80s, and a big Sharp fan, and and Iowa. I did a lot of, I had a lot of Iowa stuff when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of you're right. A lot of the designs back then were that silver, for home audio, the silver. Well, then it went to black, right? And now they've kind of, I don't know. I think it's still black pretty much now, but there's still some nice silver ones.
Yeah, it would shift, black, silver. Yeah, it would shift at its times, and
That one over your shoulder is one you did, right, Gary? The
big model is one of the sound machine. Well, I did 3 sound machines. Yeah, and that's the second generation sound machine. And then there's a sketch behind there that's not a sketch. That's a rendering.
Right.
And then below there's a thing it's called a bazooka. Yeah,
I was curious too on the paint. So I mean, obviously, I keep looking down here. You guys are probably seeing, but having one of these things here is I would assume that this, there's two-toned, right? I noticed that because I've made a 2040 printer, right? Which I don't think Timex ever really came out with the silver version. They were supposed to, because I'm sure they wanted it to match this new design.
Mm-hmm.
And I've painted a few, but I don't know if you know the actual kind of paint code or what kind of paint color this is.
No, I don't know.
You don't know that?
No.
Because I know the bottom's kind of a, to me, it's like it's kind of a darker gray.
That's just a natural gray. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the top obviously is the silver, which I don't, it's obviously painted, right? They paint the silver on.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it is a lighter plastic. It is, you look under the cartridge door here and it's not silver, but it's kind of a silverish color.
That's what you would do when you're going to paint something silver. Then they would mold it in a light gray. So if the edges start to wear off,
right?
You wouldn't want to do it in a black cabinet because of all the marks. But I'll go get that radio there a minute, and I'll show you a little bit why this color scheme is here.
Okay.
Right. So Gary, when I talked to him earlier, told me that he stole that silver from Philips. It was a color that he used a lot at Philips.
Right.
You see, it's got a silver front, and then, like you say, I have a gray back.
Mm-hmm.
And see there, that's a dead ringer for what?
Okay.
Same color scheme.
Yeah. And,
I pretty much found the color for the silver that I think is pretty much a match. It's just the gray, because this isn't painted. The gray isn't painted. It's just plastic. It's just molded in that color.
Yeah, it's plastic, yes.
And on the 2040 printer, when I finished it, I was like, well, hey, the bottom isn't gray. I was looking at it and it was black, right? Because the bottom of the casing is black. Normal. I mean, the whole thing's black. So I had to end up painting it gray because I wanted to mimic the two-toneness, right? And I just was having a harder time finding a gray color to paint it. And anyway, I just was wondering if you might have known the, maybe the two-tone color code or whatever that you guys were kind of using for these.
If I had the model drawing, I would have that information, because that would be part of my notes on the model drawing. Would be paint the cabinet silver and the base this color, which is probably a Pantone color, gray or something.
Right.
Or maybe I got a plastic color from a supplier that you'd pick out a gray color for a standard plastic gray, and specify that in the model drawing. And
Because I know I'm kind of asking because I'm
yeah.
making more things match the new scheme, right? So I mean, like a
That's really
the mic-
interesting.
yeah, the micro drives, I've kind of shaved down the Sinclair because where the Sinclair is, it's raised, right? It's
Yeah.
raised plastic there, and I have to file that down so it's smooth,
Wow.
and then I'll have to polish it and maybe prep it, you know. But anyway, what I can't do is I noticed, I think on the Timex ones, they kind of have those fake vents,
Yes.
right? They have the fake vents on it,
Yeah.
and I can't really do that with that particular. I'd have to probably come up with a whole new mold or 3D print something. But and then of course they have the little the recessed rectangle for the Timex Sinclair sticker logo, right?
Bigger one in there. Yeah.
Right. And so I can't mimic that, but at least I can get the color right, and I
Yeah.
can put a Timex Sinclair 2060 label on there. And I'm trying to think what else.
Yeah, I mean, the color, the color, the scheme you're doing would pull your system together quite well. Yeah.
Right. It's trying to mimic some of the components that they had in
Yeah.
that, you know, the final picture with the
Yeah.
bus expansion unit and everything. But
Yeah.
because like I said, I really do like the two-tone design and everything. I mean, I think it was a much better looking design than per se the Sinclair stuff with just being all black. Right. It added some flair to it, right? And gave it some distinction when it was put up against other machines.
Yeah, and it separated a bit from the Sinclair products. I mean, the pure Sinclair products.
Yeah.
Being Sinclair Timex. Yeah.
Gary, do you recall if Timex folks talked to you about the keyboard at all? Like what, if they talked about the design decision behind the keyboard?
No.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think I have any even preliminary sketches for that one to know the timing as to when I was doing that.
Okay.
Whereas on the sketches for the Timex computer, there are dates at the bottom, and the sketches I did for the Triathlon watch, I have dates on it to know when I did it, what month I did it in. And so I don't.
Maybe Gary or David, you might, because I've heard that was basically a Brother keyboard, right? Timex kind of borrowed those from Brother.
Right. Yeah, the EP20.
Yeah, I've never looked at that machine up, but I think that's kind of where they got that keyboard design from.
So Gary, these drawings of yours are dated January '83, and you were not kidding about just jumping right into the deep end.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I think I found a paper that I was sending off to our patent lawyer, and on there was a date, and it was end of January 23rd. They wanted to know when is the first documented drawings of this product, and I found that piece of paper in my file, so that was in. Because these boards don't have a day, they only have a month and a year on it. They don't have a day on it. Yeah. But on the paper that's sent off to the patent lawyers, when the patent office within the department within Timex, there was a date mentioned as to a date and a drawing number as to. Well, when I know the original date for these things when they do a production on it. And,
well, I'm kind of curious too. Did you, when they were asking you to, or they were looking at your designs, did they already have a printed circuit board size in mind that you had to design around, or was it more they were going to design the circuit board around your design?
Right, because I think it was more flexibility because it was all the sketches. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't have stuck it on, trying to stick it on the side on the first couple boards, and then going past those things because they're gonna, you stick it in the side, back in the side. That means you're gonna interfere with any jacks on the back of the machine, and that's gonna interfere, and also interfering with your joystick connectors. And it'll be a sketch number.
Well, so Gary, here's a design you have where it goes, where you were suggesting it would be in this
pop-up there,
pop-up window in the middle. So I think that suggests that
They're sticking on the side.
Yeah,
but
over here on the
that's gonna-
side.
That's going to interfere with the sockets in the back and joystick connectors, because
Right.
I had the joysticks coming out of there already, and so I went past that quite quickly.
Yeah.
Well, I stayed on it for a couple of days though, didn't I? I got 3 sketches there with it. And on the bottom sketch there, I had a little bit of a protruding thing in the back to accept the yeah. But yeah, these they go by them pretty quick, because they're no, you just do it and then you go on with
Amazing.
yeah. And then here started really homed in on what I really was thinking it should be. And as you can see in the bottom sketch, that I have there's a door, and then the door has is sitting in between two channels there. But in the in solution, the door went out to the end of the cabinet, I believe, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious to say, what really drives the cabinet design? Is it more the circuit board, or I probably, in this case, I think it was actually the cabinet design, the ID of the cabinet really kind of.
Well, it's basically the keyboard is running what 95% of the unit.
Right,
So-
right.
So it's basically what you do with the cartridge and the cartridge slot. It's basically what I was playing around with, putting on the side or whatever else, and yeah. Then how to is it covered or not covered? And yeah. I like covering things up. I have.
And I know Stuart asked a question there too, Gary, about I guess Stuart's asking about the carrying case, right? The 1050, that little clamshell or blow molded carrying case.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some pictures up on the screen here. Here we go. So Gary, I don't know if do you remember this thing?
No. It's nothing to do with me. Yeah.
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 So you said there was another designer at the same time as you.
Not working on computers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No.
Okay. So it sounds like
There was digital watches, there was analog watches, and then there was health check, and
Right.
they all had their areas of responsibility, and but as far as computers go, yeah, I was the only guy.
wow.
And, yeah, so I was a manager of one. But yeah, then product management, they're really supportive of what I was doing, because I remember a confrontation, if you want to call it that or not, but it was my boss, my design director, and then the product manager, the guy I was reporting to all the time in product management, and my director was disagreeing with my keyboard graphic design.
Huh.
And on the 2068, and I said I stick with it, and then the product manager said we're sticking with what Gary says, and that was the end of the conversation.
Wow.
He didn't back off. He just kept it the way it was. No, we're sticking with what Gary says, and that's it. And that's good support.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found that keyboard difficult. I mean, these keys, they're poor little guys, and they have 5 functions per key. 1 above, 1 below, and 3 on.
Right.
And then designing this thing, okay, the A, B, C, D, and E, and all those, they got to be pretty big, because that's what normal typewriter, that's what keyboard is. But there's two other functions on the same keypad, key top that want to be there too, and it was quite a challenge to try to do that. And so I made those graphics, and I did the final artwork, and I sent those off to a supplier, and we got a sample back, And I took one of the little magnifying loops. You stick on your eye and you get right down on it. And I knew that one of my letter sets had a little imperfection in it. And I found that imperfection. And they used my artwork, dead ringer, for their printing. They didn't go and make new artwork. They used my stuff because that imperfection was still in there.
That was Letraset.
I do my stuff in Letraset, yeah.
Oh, do you recall what the font was?
No, I don't know.
Because I remember
No.
seeing scads and scads.
But
and scads of-
it would be all, it was Letraset and like that, yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so
And
Gary,
then I would make then have a no, it's probably done 1-to-1. I don't think I did a 2-to-1.
you know, I think
And then you would make, we had a machine in the back that you could make copies with, photocopy type things, and yeah, and the artwork would go off and went off. Yeah.
so.
Can I ask, so you're saying you designed the overlay, basically, the key, like
Yeah.
what was on the letters?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Yes.
wow, I didn't gather that till just this second. Wow, that's amazing. It does work. I mean, I was just using it a few minutes ago just to brush up on using it before I got online here.
Oh,
And
wow.
it works, you know. I had to put on my glasses so I could see the keyboard while I type, but otherwise it works great still, you know.
Yeah,
Good.
looking at it here, you've got 3 things that are on the actual keys themselves
Right.
for most of the keys.
Yeah,
And then the
one
rest of them, the rest of them are on that the plastic overlay that goes over everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was, and I'm not what you would call a graphic designer. I mean, I'm not a graphic designer, but yeah, I don't think a graphic designer could have done too much different with it because there's only limited space around that key and between the keys to do anything with. And
So-
Yeah, everything's, I mean, like you're right. The lettering, I mean, the letters are a little bit bigger than the,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
words,
Yeah,
the words are a
little-
little bit smaller.
yeah, but yeah, it's a little bit bigger, but it's not,
Yeah, not much.
and it's done in bold rather than normal. Yeah.
So
And I have
Gary-
I have to wonder too. I mean, are you kind of surprised that this computer is still being talked about today? I mean, 40 years later.
I guess the word would be flabbergasted.
Okay.
I started doing research on it several years ago, and I knew that Timex had gotten out of the business. I mean, yeah, I knew that a long time ago. But then I found out that this TS68 2068 had life in Portugal and had a serious life in South America.
Mhm.
I mean, there was people. I mean, I didn't know that it had such a life outside of USA, and
Yeah, well, they took your design, right, and they made it black.
right, yeah,
Right, they just made a black
Yeah, they
one.
cut
and then
off
they
the- they
cut
cut
off
off
the
the
cartridge
cartridge,
slot.
yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And so that
Yeah.
was their 2048.
wow.
But I mean, the rest of it's the same. It's the same design. I mean, they did
Yeah.
mold your case a little bit. They put like a power light, which was nice, so
wow.
you could know that it was on.
I
But
didn't-
yeah,
I'm just floored with this. I mean, I find it interesting to talk about it. Yeah, I find it very.
I would just imagine, because growing up, most of us growing up at that time were like, well, we didn't have this future look as well. This is going to be valuable someday. Somebody's going to really want. Most of this stuff was like, I'm never going to use this crap again. So you just sell it, right? That's how a lot of
Yeah.
I've sold things to eBay that I now it's time for somebody else to use it, right? That might
Yeah.
need it. Other than it's just collecting dust here, but now I'm getting back around to, well, I don't care if it collects dust. I want it, right? I want to physically have it. And I can pull it out whenever I want instead of just having memories. And I'm just sure that as
Yeah.
a designer of all this, I mean, it's got to be I don't know, surreal a bit, 40 years later that here's people still using these things that you had a
Well,
huge hand in
yeah,
designing.
but you're using them because of the software inside and what they do. And-
Well, that's true, but I mean, it's an iconic design as far,
Yeah,
you know, when
yeah,
you think of
yeah.
Timex Sinclair 268, that's what, you know, you think of your
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
And so that is your,
Yeah.
that is your claim to fame, I guess, as far as that is concerned. So, and you know, I have to say, I don't really, like I said, I don't really have any big qualms with it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you had to deal with what you had to deal with, and I think you did a, you know, a really great job with what you had, you know, and turning it into something that Timex could call their own, right?
Yeah.
I know that's kind of what they wanted to do at that time, to compete with, you know, the Commodore 64s and the TI-99s and the Ataris and everything like that. You know, they didn't want the rubber chiclet
Yeah.
keyboard and all the criticism, you know, maybe that flew over in Britain, right? But
Yeah.
of course, in the US, that wasn't going to work with the kind of computers that we had to compete against here. So,
It's a pity they couldn't have been more successful. On one of my boards, I have some dimensions written down. I don't know, I think it's board 3. And I have the Philips, or not the Philips, the Timex dimensions down. And then there was an Epson, and then there's some dimensions down. And I was comparing cabinet sizes, I believe, at that point. And yeah, the Timex one was a lot lower profiled. And let's see, it's board, there it is, board 3. And the bottom, yeah, I have TS20 at 310 millimeters by 185 by 31. And the Epson is 189, 216. And so ours was, of course, we have the cartridge at the side, but ours was much thinner than the Epson one, and it wasn't so deep. And
so you're looking at the Epson HX20 then, or HR20?
I'm
Looks
not
like
sure.
HX20, yeah.
Okay, so that was their like that was
oh,
their little portable computer kind of thing. Yeah, okay.
all right. Oh, okay, that was an Epson HX. Okay, I didn't know. Okay, yeah. And I was comparing something there in my notes to myself, and yeah, it was a very good product they had going, but it's just a pity that it. Oh,
There we
Yeah,
go.
that's kind of what they consider the first like laptop computer, really.
that's got a real keyboard to it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Gary, over the pandemic, I decided I was going to, speaking of real keyboards, make a real keyboard.
Oh,
Oh, is it not going to focus? Crap. It's
yeah,
not
it's
gonna
not
focus.
about it, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll post a picture of it later. I managed to squeeze all the graphics onto the keycap.
How did you get them on there? I mean, did you use Electroset or what?
Right. No, there's a couple companies that
Oh,
do custom printing. You just design it up in, you know, in like Adobe Illustrator, right? And send it off to them. And then 2-3 weeks later, you get your keycaps back. But I also had to design the keyboard, the circuit board itself, because it has real, like it has the same key switches that you have on your home computer now. It's got real key switches in it. And so I designed the circuit board, and there's underneath, I'm gonna pull one of these off. Underneath is an actual key switch,
the text
right?
switches,
And you see
yeah.
the odd shape in order to fit
Yeah.
into the odd shape
Oh, yeah.
of the, you know, the thing. And I managed to get myself some little, it's kind of hard to see, there's little Amphenol connectors to
Did you-
connect inside. It
did
just
you
drops
make-
right in.
Did you make that the keyboard itself then? I mean,
Everything,
all
everything I just showed you, I designed over this past year. It was a couple iterations.
and then you got those little switches and you had to mount them all on the,
Yeah, you can buy key switches over the internet.
yeah, why not? You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are the keycaps available?
I can send you the file and you can order them yourself if you'd like.
Ooh, that would be nice.
I will make the file available to everybody. I'll put it up on GitHub actually, and let everybody know.
Thank you. Gary, I had one question for you. How did the practicalities of manufacturing affect your design? For instance, in the case you have to worry about draft angles and whatever else in the tooling. Did that factor into how you did your design, or was that someone else's responsibility?
No, because the side draft is so short. I believe it's just straight off. I think it's got a 3-degree draft on it, probably on both the bottom of the cabinet and the top of the cabinet. Because it's only, I wish I had a cabinet here. It's really quite short. I don't think I would have gone to they would have gone to a side coring on that. Like on our radio recorders, we have flat sides, and they're like 100 millimeters deep, maybe. And there they have to use side coring. Then you have your front cabinet, and then your side core and your cores top and bottom, and the inside of the cabinet. Then you would have your draft angles going in there, of probably 3 degrees tapering in. But no, the computer it's not deep enough to have a problem there. Yeah.
Okay, and then did you put all the bosses and stuff inside your design, or?
No.
Okay.
No, that would be an engineering guy with, yeah, that would be, because then they would work with the PC, the electrical people, as to where they can put bosses.
True.
And for mounting. And no, that's the engineering. I just do the outer shell, and then they worry about wall thicknesses and all that type of thing. But wall thickness is usually what, 2.5 mil maybe. And
So yeah, that's kind of more in line with what I was thinking, is that you created the design, the
Yeah.
ID, and that they kind of
oh yeah, I mean
made the circuit board to go inside of it. And I mean, they may have had to cut holes, where they wanted for the ports, right? You didn't do that, but that's pretty trivial for them to do.
well, and if they gave me that information, then it would be in the model drawing, because for that radio I just showed you, I did in my model drawing, I did the back cabinet. That's what I did later in life with Philips. I did the back cabinets too, and so it's got all of the battery doors in there, and the classic
IO
doors in it, and all of the audio outlets, and all the things are there. And if the information is available, then I'll draw it up. But on that computer, it was only a straight line. There was only audio, video in and out, and the power plug, and then the connector. I might have designed. I don't know if I designed that or not. The little door in the back for the main connector.
Where they got lost.
Yeah, I wonder about that, because you've got the little cassette door that comes off,
There,
right?
that
Covers
connector there. Yeah.
that covers it.
But I would suspect I probably did do that, because I'm sure they gave me the information for it. It's really quite, just draw a couple circles and they're done.
Yeah, because this one here is actually the Portugal one. This is a Timex Computer 2068. So, I don't know if you can't really see it, but this is where the USA one would be, but it's got, you on plastic molding, you can see the circle, but it's filled in, right? It's like, and where they made the new one, right, for the PAL modulator, right? So
and you see the bottom of the cabinet there, it's got a step in it. So there's a step over there by the
right. There's one by the expansion port here, yep, and then by the cassette port.
And that opening there is because of wall thicknesses. That goes in like that because of wall thickness. They wanted to the surface for the cartridge is higher than they had to go up to get to that cartridge level.
Right.
So that's why it's got that indent in there.
And again, this is the Europe or the Portugal one. So I think they had to make the American one was thinner. Your cartridges are really thin. The Portugal ones, they were a little taller, so they obviously had to modify this top plastic piece to get a little bit more clearance, because they won't fit in the American ones, in the ones you designed. They'll hit. On these, it goes in fine, so they obviously changed that design somewhere along the line. But
on the inside of that door there's some textures, some lines.
Yes, right.
And those kind of things I would add, because if you don't add that, it ends up being quite plain.
Right.
And my radio recorders, when I did my first couple of them, the inside of the cassette compartment was just plain flat plastic. But as the years went by, I said, now that's a plastic surface that I can do something with. And I would add textures in there and make it so when you open the door up, that was a little bit something happening in there. And so I did that there too. And yeah.
That's the difference between a designer and an engineer like me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I said for the cassette door and cassette area, after I did a couple of radios, and I said, heck, I mean, that's a surface, it's just going to be a couple of lines in them, and I got a little more interesting thing to it. So I would add to it, put grooves around instead of having for the spindles coming through, just straight through cabinet, I might put a 45-degree chamfer around it, a little bit of detailing to make it look more mechanical, as if it's not just, plug straight through. And yeah, just to give it an added flair. If you can do it, do it. And it doesn't cost any more money. Well, maybe it did.
And you didn't have anything to do with the well, this is in the 2020, but the cassette recorder that they had, did you?
Painted silver, and that's all.
Just painted silver?
I'm sure it was a purchase item, and we just came it spec'd, and no, I didn't have anything to do with it. No.
So that,
Yeah, this is actually the Miniset 9, like David was talking about, and I've noticed there's a couple other. There's a General Electric model that's just like this. They use the same mechanism, and I've got several of them. But I don't know who made that for Timex. I don't really know who made this for Radio Shack.
Carl, I've heard it's Sampo, SAMPO.
Okay, really?
But I haven't dug into it.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on circuit boards. I think the circuit boards are a little different, but my 2020s are put away. But I've just been getting these kind of recently because and things that use this same mechanism, the tape mechanism inside. But anyway, I just wondered if you might have had anything to do with that design, because it does look like something that was off the shelf and they just kind of rebranded it.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are just amazing. What you're so enthusiastic over it.
Well, you're responsible for the silver design, I guess, if you want to kind of call it that, I suppose.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. And
Gary, Stuart wanted to know if you had been in touch with Joao in Portugal, the Load ZX Spectrum Museum guys.
yes.
You had sent them the. I was telling Stuart that you sent them the same images.
The same drawings that you have.
Yeah.
And I hope that they're big enough for him to print if he wants to, and some other things. So I've been in contact with him by email quite a few times. And at one point he sent me a link to do a tour of his establishment. And yeah, I've been in touch with him. Yes, I found him through. I'm not finding him now. I have to go back now. I've been a couple of years now with him.
But you found him, huh?
I'm trying to think now. No. No, he didn't. No, it was another guy, a friend of his, who found me.
Oh.
And put us in contact with each other. He said, I have a friend who's opening a museum, and he would like to exhibit your drawings. And then we got in touch. But initially, I'd have to check my emails if I still have them or not. Another guy found me, a friend of the guy who has a museum, found me, and then we got in touch with each other. And yeah.
So, I think I mentioned to you that I found your the patent drawings sort of by accident. I was looking for some other patent information from another person at Timex, and I found your name, and then I went and I found you on LinkedIn, and you have listed the 2068 as your design on your LinkedIn page. And I was I was thrilled when I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we're talking about the computer, but the triathlon watch that I designed has gotten, that's, I mean, it was got in, what was it? It was in ID magazine, and then it was in a product design magazine, and it was in a movie on the wrist of Dustin Hoffman.
Really?
I just watched the movie. I rented it from Prime Video, and the movie is horrible. And I watched the whole movie because I knew that I saw him and Warren Beatty out on a ledge of a building, and then I saw the watch, the Timex watch, and it's in 1987. This movie isn't so, but I saw the Timex watch, and I saw it just like that, and I remembered over the years, and so I watched this whole movie, and I didn't see my watch. Where the heck is this watch? They got to be out on a ledge of a building. So I scrolled the whole thing back to the very beginning, and I found them on the belt on this ledge of a building, and there was a watch. Very, I mean, it wasn't being shown. I mean, really a good view of it, but yeah, you could tell it was a Timex Triathalon watch on his wrist. That red circle with the red power button, and it was the Timex watch. Yeah.
So you said that ended up in ID and some other magazines. Why
Yeah.
was that? Was it there was something unusual about the design? Or?
Let me see what they said. I got it in my book. I'll see what they said of the why. Does it have to be on there? Okay, there it is. Oh yeah, it was cited in the 1985 July-August ID magazine for its unique characteristics. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad. But anyway, I put it in, and then the watch appears in the Product Design 2 by the Editor's ID magazine, a selection of international award-winning products of the mid-'80s. And I got, well, I don't have the ID magazine, but I do have that Product Design 2 book that it was in. Yeah, yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions for Gary? Jump in.
Yeah.
The only thing I could just Hail Mary ask is the molds for the injection molding, so we can make more of these cases. But no.
Yeah, you'd have to go to Portugal. Portugal ought to be a better chance.
I think
But,
Joao is your person for that, Carl.
I don't think they have those. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'd have to. Yeah, you could put it into a 3D program and make a 3D printing out of it. That you might be able to do.
Eric, were you going to ask a question?
Yeah, I did type one, but I'll just say it verbally. So I remember getting one for Christmas as a kid, and I just loved the silver design of it. But the one thing that always was odd to me is that they didn't put a LED power light anywhere on it. And I was wondering if Gary knew why they didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't know why either, because yeah, when I was doing the bus units, I was mentioning LEDs for the transformer units, but I don't know why they didn't have a power LED on it. I don't know.
So what's funny is as a kid, I knew how to solder. So that was the first thing I did is I added a little power light.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and Portugal caught up with you. They put the power light on the 2048s. They did put a power light on those.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, Gary, I want to mention something to you. Your drawing that has the 2068 in it. Let me just find that and bring it up. Where you've got all the all the stuff composited in. I don't know if you noticed this, Gary. This is actually a 2048. If you look very closely at the
Oh.
numbers,
Uh-huh.
it says 2048.
Yeah.
So this photo is from the when it was going to be called the 2048 and the 2072, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, is this, I don't know, it might,
Unless that's no, it's a Timex Sinclair, so it's not a Timex
Yeah,
computer.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
they certainly did intend to have the 2048 and the 2072, as you mentioned, David. But yeah, for cost, I think they just said hell with the 2048.
yeah. Well.
And then the guy said the wrong number, right?
I think so. I think what is
Yeah.
his Dan Ross? I think was his
Yes.
name. The
Yeah.
Timex VP. He called it a 2068.
Yeah, and he liked the number better.
Right. Because the 72 obviously was a 72K RAM. That was in all the advertisements and everything, right? Because that was the big deal back then. Was how much storage and everything were in machines back then, and that was a big number back then. It was bigger than the Commodore 64, right? So it must be better. Bigger must be better.
yeah,
Well,
But
thank
that-
you, Gary.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful hearing from you.
it's been very interesting.
I told you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Your
Yeah.
enthusiasm is great, yeah.
So do you still have a 2068, or when was the last time you saw one?
Well, that's a good question, because I have a cabinet in my storage room, which is just a shell. And that might be that might be that 2048, because I made that photograph with that cartridge in there. So that might be that I have in my storage room in the back, 2048. But I made a presentation in my studio. They wanted to see I'm in the old dinosaur of the studio, right? Everybody's young guy, and I've got all the, and they wanted to see my portfolio. So I put together a PowerPoint and I brought in some of my radio recorder models. And as I went through this PowerPoint, there comes up the 2068. And then a couple of days later, one of the guys in the studio came up and handed me a bag with the 2068 in it. And he says, from your portfolio, you can use this more than I need it. And he gave it to me. So I have that upstairs in I have a little tower in the living room that has all my designs in it, and it sits up there in the living room. Yeah, it's a 2068, and I guess it works. I don't have it didn't have give me a transformer for it, but that's the closest I got to a working one. So I've never seen one working, no, because I left so early, so quickly, and yeah, but yeah.
I have a quick question. Since this was only a year of your life working there,
Yes.
how many other products do you think you've made that would have a following like this, or is this the only one?
Oh, nothing like this. But then I don't, like I said, when I go on the internet and I look up some of my old designs, there's one design. It's called, where is it? And it's incredible. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's the D8814, and yeah, I wanted it. And you go on and you put in that Philips and you look for up. Well, these people that collect boom boxes, this particular radio they call the Elephant. So I wonder what it'd be like to talk to a group of those people about this particular design, because this particular design has a bit of a history, which you can't. That I got in trouble with the senior product management with it.
What was the product, the model number there on that, Gary?
The D8814.
Huh.
And it's yeah, that's the one. And originally, that top surface of that model in my original sketches was a flat angled surface. And senior product management didn't like that so much. And we had the dummy models completely finished. And so there's a expensive model sitting on the table that had to go back to the model shop. And I had to go back to the drawing board to put in the extra details for the displays behind to give some more interest. And
Yeah, it does kind of look like a very deep unit.
yeah, this
Depth-wise.
is a big unit, this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a horse. This is, and then, and you can see the cassette deck there. I had a particular thing that I wanted to do to make it look different. This you can even take that clear lens off and the door will still work.
Mhm.
And so the grills go in and then they go 45 degrees down and meet up with the surface behind the cassette. So when you open up the cassette, the surface flows from the speakers down to 45, straight across and back out again. This makes a large opening. It's very different from any cassette player, radio recorder you're going to find anywhere.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, I had a Super Scope, a Marantz Super Scope boom box. It kind of looks similar to this. I mean, it's definitely not that deep, but it had a similar kind of design with the, the sloping face on it.
This is apparently nicknamed the elephant due to its bizarre styling, Gary.
Yeah, right. That's why I like to talk to him. What I mean, is this bizarre? Is this a compliment or is this not a compliment? But yeah, they call it bizarre styling, and I'm like, but it's a pretty heavy kind of unit.
I've seen a lot of boom boxes in my time, and that doesn't look like a bad design to me. I don't think they're saying that from a poor, poor design perspective. But
well, it's got everything. It's got, I mean, those hand grips that are on the speakers, they come off of grips that you would get on component units for hi-fi systems.
Right.
I'm surprised they got that past product management for cost reasons. I mean, because they are real metal pieces. But yeah, all that got past product management and cost what's called O&E. It's those bars. I mean, yeah, this is an expensive unit. This thing is.
That looks huge.
I mean, that's yeah.
Yeah, I've never honestly seen this before. This is the first time I've seen this model.
It's got two FM antennas. I mean, it's got everything in there.
Looks like you got enough room to land a 747 on it.
Yeah. But these people that they're enthusiastic about their boombox stuff. I mean, it's and I've got
there's some, like I said, I'm more familiar with Sharp and Iowa and those, and I know some of the bigger models from them. Yeah, they'll go for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on eBay these days. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, I shouldn't have gotten rid of my a lot of the stuff that I would collect, got sold as I moved. When we moved from Europe to the States, I had the what's it now? No, the D8734. It was a double deck sound machine with separate speaker boxes, and it was a very big unit. It had two tape decks and control the control buttons for both decks in the middle, and then above that was you can select deck A or deck B or both decks for the tape deck. And I gave it to my brother-in-law, and then I gave it for a Christmas present. Yeah, that one. I gave it to my brother-in-law for a Christmas present.
Yeah, that's another small unit.
And I didn't.
Small.
Yeah.
Hey, it's only 200 pounds. That's not bad back then, I guess.
Is that the weight or the price?
Oh my.
Yeah.
Gary, when you're designing something like that, how much cooperation and iteration is involved in placing all the controls and tape decks and things like that?
they give me, I get a list of controls. I mean, yeah, you say the tape decks, and I position them all. I started. I mean, I'll show you. I'll show you my first drawings. I can do that from here, and you can see that my wish was to have a door in front of the. There's the thumbnail sketch, and then that's the final sketch, and you can see there's a door over the controls, but in the final thing, the door is gone. And that has to do with price. But the controls on this one, I mean, if you look at the PCB for the preamplifier, there's the volume knob and all of that is this
Can't be that
model-
heavy if a man of your age, and probably my shoulders are bad, and you're picking that thing up with one arm. That's pretty good.
But you can see that this board here is what's in this model, in this double deck thing. You got the band selectors here, they're in here. This is just a carryover. We took this PCB over and made this. But all the buttons along the bottom, they would all be functions that I did the ergonomics, or what I figured how it should be used. And it was quite a unique little thing, because you could put in a disc jockey, you could put in tape deck, songs playing on tape deck A, and you got your people dance around like and whatever else, and then you put in a new song, tape deck in the B, and then you'd be able to take a slider and go gradually from the 1A, which is playing, and slide it gradually to the other without doing a sudden jump. It was a really neat little machine. Yeah.
And I'm just kind of thinking now, maybe why I really didn't see much Philips stuff is I don't know if they really marketed those kind of things in America, in the US. I'm sure in Germany and Europe, they were all over the place, obviously, but
not everything made it over here. And they did
Right.
it under a Magnavox preamp. And a lot of times we would do products like this first radio recorder I did is here. Then you get this one. This is the first one I did. Then you get, that one was a Philips product, and that one was a second brand. So out of the first presentation I did for radio recorders, I got 2 designs out of it.
So
Same presentation. They said, we'll take that design for Philips, and we'll take that design for second brand. And I had a lot of work ahead of me. But that's what we would do. And you'd have a product, we'd have might be 2 or 3 people working on a project, and then you line them up, and they'd pick one for Philips, and then they would usually pick one out for a second brand. And second brand was Horny Phone, Radiola, Sierra, for all the countries. And in Europe, yeah.
Gary, that 8734, it says it came out in 1982. So that would be, just the year before you were at Timex. Did you know that it was featured in A View to a Kill? The James Bond movie that came out in 85? It was in that movie.
No, I have that. I found that out maybe probably watching the movie, but I have that in my book. I got it written down for my grandkids. But yeah, it was in A View to a Kill. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's like that first radio that I just showed you. That was that first one I did. That one there. That's a scene from Boys from Brazil.
Oh my gosh, I remember that movie. Okay.
In the first scene on the movie Boys from Brazil, there's a guy in the bushes trying to make a little bit. He wanted to be a spy to find what these people were doing, and he had, like I said, somebody in the house with a microphone planted, and he was receiving it on his radio. And he was in the bushes with this AR 170, and in the movie, and I said, "Hey, that's my radio." And he didn't last very long. They caught him about 2 or 3 scenes later and took care of him. And but they had a Philips radio in there, yeah. And that's always good fun when that happens. To surprise you like that. Yeah.
Did you do any my forte in Philips is their test equipment. I don't know if you did any kind of ID stuff for their test equipment. No, just mainly for the, seems like, consumer audio stuff, right?
Yeah. Of which they're totally out of it now. They sold it all to Gibson. Yeah. It's a
Yeah, I
shame.
know back then, there were country specific things more, and probably still even to this day, I suppose. I wouldn't see why not, but now that the world's a lot smaller than it used to be with the internet and everything, you can find out about these things. But back in the 70s and 80s, you could come out with things in a different country and you would just never ever find out about it unless
Right,
you
yeah.
just
Yeah.
unless by somebody that you knew over in that country lets you know. But other than that, I mean, there's tons of things that I didn't know existed in other markets, right? That in the US only got a certain, or they didn't get it, or they got a different version of it, right? Because of all the the broadcast bands are different and the TV stations are different, things like that. But
power is different, yeah.
right, power supplies are different. And so that's kind of interesting that, I'm just kind of thinking that you probably designed a lot of things with Philips that probably didn't make it over here too much, but
Probably, yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
unfortunate for that. But I mean, but at least now it's collectible. So I mean, you certainly can get it here if you wanted to, get it and purchase it.
Yeah, I found quite a few of the products on the internet that people are collecting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, because I would have kind of liked to get some of those boom boxes that I remember from my childhood, but like I said, they're just, I just can't see spending $2,000-3,000 for a boom box. Maybe a couple hundred, sure, but I guess those days are gone.
I don't think so either. That kind of money, you got to be a really serious person to do that.
Those boombox people are crazy.
Yeah.
Not like computer people.
Gary, when you were working at Philips in the audio division, was there a design language that you had to try to adhere to, or were you basically given carte blanche?
You can make carte blanche, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, because I had my own form language, and whatever I did, they were pretty much looking like that. It was, so I would everything I did looked like that basically. So that was the form language.
Okay.
Now but then there was one of our guys. He did one, and we called it the Lamborghini, and it had soft studs and drooping shoulders, and then I came in to do. I had to do a big set. Yeah, there. It was this one here. Yeah, okay. That one I had to do, and that was a big expensive set. Now that doesn't look anything like my boombox stuff. But I said to myself, even they didn't tell me to follow the Lamborghini, but I said it's got to have a Lamborghini flavor, so it looks like it's in the Lamborghini line, and that's the way it should have gone. I should follow what that designer did and put that form language into what I'm doing, because this is what we're in, this is what we're doing, and it fit in better doing that. Yeah, but then you get a price like a bazooka. This is not any. There's no form language there. This is really one of a kind type of thing. But yeah, and then you have the collection. That was where Philips was trying to celebrate their 100 years, and yeah, there were products like this that we did. that I did. That was a CD player, and that one was a small portable pocket radio. But there are farm language as a team. We, as a unit, the people that were working on these said we're going to have to. It wanted to be of a certain farm language, and we were all trying to follow that, from television to other things, and that we set that up as a team. But
Kind of would think,
but even within setting up a farm language, there's still a lot of parameters, a lot of expanses, ways to go with it. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of think that might have started coming in later than these earlier. I think it kind of really was up to you, your ID persons to come up with the design, because that's kind of what I'm getting out of the Timex thing. Is really Timex didn't have anything in mind. You made up some drawings of what you thought would work, and they kind of went with your ideas. They didn't have any they didn't have any preconceived notions of what they wanted things to be like, right?
They wouldn't.
And so
Yeah.
whatever you came up with, and they kind of were like, yeah, we like that, we like, we don't like that, and they kind of just went off of your best design that they liked, and then they just made their machine around that design.
So see, with the Timex, normally when it was Philips with radio recorders, I was designing. We were putting up 4 or 5 proposals each to put on the wall, and so out of that they would choose one design for Philips and one for second brand if they wanted to, but they had a selection. And I don't know what I did with the Timex, if I just gave them with one design and they took it, or if I gave them proposals of 3. That I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, you had a bunch of different drawings, but so I work at HP, but I'm a kind of like a technical consultant guy. But I'm not in the design phase. But I know nowadays, as far as HP is concerned, they do change the designs every couple of years, right? And they have a pretty good ID department, and they obviously that's a brand's design, right? So they definitely want to keep that kind of close to the chest and not let that kind of stuff out. But they do have a design language these days. I don't know about, when back in the 80s, it was kind of the wild west, I think, because nobody had other than what was already available. Like, okay, this is what the Commodore 64 looks like. This is what the TI-99 4A looks like. So you have some, I guess, ideas in your head when you're designing something of maybe it's, you kind of, that's in the back of your mind when you're designing it, right? Because you have that preconceived notion of what those machines are, and then you're kind of, I don't know how your thought process are as far as designing something new for another company entirely, right?
Well, that could be then a starting point, and then from there, then you would say that's your base, and you would start making iterations off of that. In the early, when I first got there in 75 was my first rated recorder. But each time we did a product, an audio product, we were reinventing the wheel. It was like designing cars in the 50s. Each year was completely different from the previous year. And then you got into the 70s and 80s, and then they would kind of burn just a little bit and change it really small. They would do gradually. And that's what we developed into, I think, because so many of the things that I did, they looked all family.
Right. Well, the other thing too is the economies of scale, and like you said, they were reusing boards, right? They were, or either that, where they would design one board for different products, and they would just populate different things upon, so you don't see that on the external design, but that, and I've worked on a lot of stuff internally, so yeah, I see that, right? In later years, it's just easier for them to design one board that does, it covers like 4 or 5 models, and they just don't populate, they kind of like you say, when you build cars, you got to start with a baseline, and then you pad on, you work up the level, but you still use the same board, but you just stuff more parts onto it on the higher end models, right?
Right, and here's a product. Let's see, that was the original product. Oops, how am I going to do that? And then that was a facelift. The one I have on the table, that was just a front cabinet, a new control buttons, and new display graphics, but everything stayed the same. Well, new grills to make it look different, because the one had round speaker grills and this one had square ones. But you wanted to make it look as different as possible, but everything else changed. The back cabinet was the same,
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
they're just making.
Yeah, they did a facelift, so to speak.
Yeah. But
Now,
they-
Adam was asking about your book there, but I think that's your personal portfolio book, right? That's not something
oh, no,
that's
no,
available.
no, that's Shutterfly.
Yeah.
I made I got two. I got one for each of my grandkids.
It's very nice. I was just appreciating it and looking at it and wondering, where can I get that? You know, that's great.
I did have the same question. Yes, you might be able to put it back up on Shutterfly and sell it to us, Gary, if you were so inclined. You know.
Well, yeah, on Shutterfly, you have to make sure when you buy them. When I bought it, I had to make sure I got free unlimited pages, because this goes over the limit of pages.
Mhm.
And I think this book was going to be, if I had to buy it, would pay all the pages.
Mhm.
I know it was going to be $80 or $90. And I said, I'm not paying that kind of money for this. And then they did it with unlimited pages. And I think it was like 25 or something like that dollars if you get unlimited pages, because their normal books are like 20 pages long. And I think this one might be 60 pages. I don't know how many pages this thing is. I don't know. But it broke the bank as far as being able to buy it without unlimited pages.
Mm.
Well, yeah, I think it might be, worth, like you say, to keep your legacy going, is to, yeah, obviously those must be scanned. I'm like you said, into Shutterfly, but digitize that stuff for the ages, right?
Yeah, this book is yeah, I mean, that's the cover of the book. Yeah, all the designs are in format to give it a bit of texture on the front. Yeah, I have a lot of scanned in stuff, and
You're
then all
teasing us here, Gary.
these pages are all filled up. I have a sketch here from General Motors that was a sketch for striping. Yeah,
Right, on the, yeah.
It was a sketch for striping, but yeah, I took the sketch, and then this is for my grandkids, and I have two grandsons who like trucks and like jets and whatever else. So I took then my sketch into Photoshop and got a background backdrop of Bonneville salt flats, and then put some dust on the wheels and put some jet engine stuff on the back. And,
Yeah, I'm a big GM guy too, so I don't know if you did anything with like Pontiac back in the 70s. I
no,
guess you were in,
I was in truck.
because the Pontiac Firebird had just all kinds of decals on those things back in the 70s. Tons of decals.
I was in Chevrolet Truck Studio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I worked on the 73 Chevy C10 pickup truck, and did some work on that, but I just have a lot of sketches out of that, so I didn't get anything done.
Right, okay. Yeah, they didn't put too much striping and stuff not on trucks too much back then. A little bit here and there.
On the C10, this truck, the truck that I showed you, yeah, there we did a striping project on that. That one. There we did a striping project on that one, and then the guy in the studio and I went up to the production center, and they gave us, both of us, a Astro truck cab to tape our design on. So we spent the day with the tapes and with your sketch to tape all the truck, and then they were going to paint it.
Oh,
Interesting. There was, striping for these trucks, and then one went into production. Yeah. But we used to do not stuff like the Firebird, because they really had a decal on the front, on the hood, and then,
Decals on the side, on the back. Yeah, like I said, it had a ton of decals for those years, those late 70s.
yeah. But then you get that in Truck Studio that much. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But,
Well,
yeah.
Gary, this has been absolutely fantastic. I told you these guys were nuts.
Well, I find them very enthusiastic. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, all the stuff that they're building, and to go with this, well, yeah, it's just incredible. That's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic what folks did with the computer, over time, and even now, there's still interesting things being done with it. It's just blows me away.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank you, sir. If you want to stick around, I'm going to turn the floor over to everybody and let the chaos begin. We have about half an hour left before I'm going to pull the plug and tell them I'm going to bed.
Oh yeah! Wow. You got we really got this one going, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be talking about this stuff, and I can, yeah. There are stories to be had. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
I'd like to ask if we're open to questions now, general questions, even though I've been asking questions anyway. Sorry about that. You look back at the time period, the 70s and the 80s, and all the way up to when you retired. What was your favorite time period to work in, just in general? Was there a certain era that felt more comfortable than another?
Oh yeah, I think the times in audio and I don't, not in time periods of design philosophies or whatever else, but in audio in Eindhoven and audio in Vienna were more enjoyable because I liked the product so much, and the product group, the people I was working with, and then Singapore, I didn't care for the product type that much. I like micros, but I didn't like mini systems that much. But it would be 80s and 70s, yeah. Because I mean, you could in the 70s, then it was a single mono deck, a single cassette deck player. Then when we went in, and then in the 70s, and then we went into the 80s, and then we got a double tape deck. And then you got into mid 80s, and then you added a CD player to it. And so the product was developing and getting more complex. And there's always something moving. Yeah,
How about your time at Timex? How did you feel working for Timex? Was it a friendly environment, or maybe a little adversarial there, or?
No, it was a great group of guys. None at all. I loved it. Yeah. I mean, when I was working there, like I said, the springtime was a crunch for all the computer stuff, because they had to get this stuff out and get it into a tool maker. Otherwise, they aren't going to get Christmas time. I mean, they did a fantastic job. If they have my design by the end of January, and they made their tools quite quickly to be able to have a product by fall. And they did their mechanical development and their electrical development, got all that work that they had to get done to get a product out by the fall. That's an amazing job. So then by August, I was at capacity, and then that's when I did the Timex watch. Because I had capacity, I said, I have capacity. Anybody, can I get something? And I did also a thing called the early pregnancy test kit, and that was for health check, and that was an interesting project to do. And there I took a bunch of samples home to talk to my wife. Okay, how do you use one of these things? to get a consumer use report out of it to help in my designing. And so that's interesting too, because it got different product areas. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that Timex got the ID down because it sounds like, yeah, you're pretty much done with that in January, you say, maybe February of
It
83.
would be in 1st of February is when probably within into a model drawing, probably easily.
Because I know, hardware wise, Timex was still, the 2068 came out, they were forced kind of to bring it out because, it wasn't really done hardware wise. But I'm just saying from your ID's perspective, that was done, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
was obviously, they had what they needed from you there. And it was just on the, they had some grandiose plans that they just didn't have enough time to really iron out before they came out with the product. So,
Time switching, right?
well, that was part of it because there's what I call the upside down board. If you ever open one 2068, it's got a board that's upside down in there. It's the 244.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of has to do with the bank switching, but and then the ROMs obviously were in sockets because there were some ROM problems, right? So I think maybe down the road they were thinking they would do a ROM upgrade, send out people, ROMs that they could swap out themselves since they were in sockets. Because a lot of the Sinclair machines, if you ever take those apart, some of them have sockets, but most of them don't. They're totally soldered down. And of course, they were built more for, at a price point. So, extra socket for every machine's like, I don't know, scales of economy. It's still 3 cents a machine, but when you're building 10,000 of them, that's a lot of money.
Well, Gary, I'm sorry, Carl, the first 8K ROM had bugs in it for the ZX81, and so there was a little bit of a delay. They had to respin those ROMs.
Right. So
well, not only that, but they also had to stick a diode on the ROM to force an instruction in the ZX81 so it would work.
Oh, okay.
And I know in the Spectrum they had to put the transistor on the ULA, if you remember that. I think on the issue 2s they had to wire in a transistor for some issue with the ULA. The ULAs were always socketed. That's true. I don't think I've ever seen those soldered in, but I mean the ROMs on a lot of machines that I recall working on, they were soldered. They just but anyway, it's just yeah, I never really thought about the industrial design side of the Timex. I mean, it's interesting that they seem to be way ahead of the ball there, right? I mean, they had your design in February, so they definitely had a lot of runway if they needed to make changes or anything like that. But it's just, so now I'm kind of seeing that, yeah, it was more the hardware engineering guys and the software engineering guys that were just really, it seemed to, I think they bit off a little bit more than they could chew in the time frame that they were trying to accomplish this in, right? And of course, I was just a kid in 82, 83, and I was I don't know, 12, 13 years old. So as most of us probably were in the same shoes there. But I remember getting it for Christmas that year, and it was the greatest thing since sliced bread to me, as far as I was concerned. And especially coming from the TS1000, right, with that crappy. Well, you live with it, you live with what you get, but that certainly was a hell of a better keyboard. I know you really didn't design the keyboard there, but at least the overall design of the whole machine is still pretty iconic in my mind. So and it obviously Timex obviously kind of was going along with that design philosophy of yours with the silver design, because everything was going to come out with that two-tone design. Right. And so that's kind of why I'm trying to replicate that as much as I can with some of these things that I can, because like I said, the printer, you see the printer is the silver one. I think it's on the box of the 2068 when they came out with it. They have a silver printer picture, or it's in one of the advertisements, right, that the 2040 printer was going to be a silver one, so it would match your
catalogs.
Yeah, it would match your 2068, right, instead of this black square blob over here that printed things. So obviously they had taken, and like I said, the 2020 printer was silver. I mean the cassette player was silver. Obviously you did the 2050 modem. I know the one that I have has a flat top. I've seen some maybe early designs they had like they had little holes or little feet things that maybe when you put stuff on top of the 2050, I
That's
don't know
it
what.
it's meant to be, that then there was
Yeah.
stack. And those holes
Right.
would be for the feet to fit in so that it wouldn't shift and it would
Right.
line up perfectly. That's what
Okay.
it's for.
Because I've seen pictures of those with those little holes in them, but when you get the real thing, it's just a flat top.
They took it
There's
off.
no right. Yeah, there's no holes in them.
Okay, yeah.
So, but then even that didn't come out from Timex. I don't know if you know that, right? I mean, they were pretty much ready for it. And I think they had everything mass produced, but then they shut down and they sold all those. Well, I don't think they sold them off to them, but I think the manufacturer just sold them on their own.
Westbridge or something.
Westridge, right?
Yeah.
They were probably then the supplier, and then they took it over.
Right.
And they took
They're
the
the ones
design
that-
over as is, and they put their name in the slot. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yep.
And but I think that's probably as far as you went with it, right? You did the 2068, you did the 2050. I think that's pretty much it, right?
1510.
Oh, you did the 1510. That's right. He said the 1510,
The
which
cartridge.
I have two of those. So thank you for that. Those are silver. And Portugal, obviously, just of course, well, it's Timex. They own those designs, right? They're not your personal. You made
no.
them, but yeah, they own them.
You sign. You might have
They're-
the name on the as the assign as a
Right.
inventor, but you get at Philips. I'll get either the choice of $1 or 2.5 guilders, and then that's what you get paid for.
Because obviously, yeah, they elaborated on some of your designs, for their own market
They
stuff.
own it. Yeah, that's it.
Right, exactly. So I'm just kind of trying to get straight in my head the things that you personally had something to do with. And so yeah, the 1510. You said the 1500. You did the graphics on the keyboard.
Color and the graphics. I said painted
Okay,
silver.
and the silver. Okay,
And then
somebody.
the background for the keys and the key, all the color and graphics for the whole thing. Yeah.
So Gary, you're responsible for that really low contrast
Yeah.
those keys.
Yeah. That's why I said I come from audio, huh? Subtleties. I mean, it should have been a little bit more contrasty. Right?
Who needs to read these things, huh?
I know. Okay.
Yeah, because I just noticed on the 1500 case it has those fake kind of vents on it, right? Which obviously the 2068 had. So somebody else must have kind of copied that design.
I think David's been waiting 40 years to say that to you. So you finally got that out of your system.
What's that? What?
About the light contrast.
Low contrast.
Yeah. But those slots on the top, yeah, they also come from the 2050 or the 1500, the Spectrum, right?
No, the Spectrum doesn't have
that's
that.
smooth.
Oh no,
Off the top,
No,
yeah.
no, that's a Timex design. So maybe that was before your time because
so the TS the 1500.
Right.
Isn't that cabinetry just a
It's
Sinclair
basically, you're right. I'm sure Timex took the Sinclair molds
But
and
it's got vents.
they changed their own. It
It's
didn't
got
have vents on
the
it.
back, wasn't it?
No. It's smooth. It's got the Sinclair, it's raised plastic Sinclair.
I had some grooves in it.
And nope, the grooves that's what Timex changed it to. And then obviously, they took the Sinclair out and they put the little recessed rectangle for the Timex Sinclair sticker in there. But I just thought maybe that you might have had something to do with that. But that might have been before your time because I think the 1500 obviously was probably in the pipe before the 2068. Yeah, see those little, they're fake vents on the top, but that's the Spectrum doesn't have that.
No.
There's nothing like that on the Spectrum.
So they may have done, that must have been added. I don't remember doing any drawings for this thing because that ties by having those vents in there, that ties that design into the 2068.
Right. That's what I thought,
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And I mean, it's a silver box, right? Another, silver design. So
And to your point, Carl, it's that weird gray.
yes, right.
Yeah.
Well, there is some
Right.
black there. There's some contrast.
You're
in
right.
there.
You're right. But listen, after 40 some odd years, it fades.
And there it's got two color printing on the keys.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Gary, you mentioned that the keyboard for the 2068 replicated some problem with your Letraset. Do you remember what that was?
With what?
With your Letraset? You said that there was a
no.
tiny.
I made the artwork. And then in that artwork, I knew that there was in one of the letters or two of there was part of the letter set didn't adhere, and there was a little bit of a mistake in there, a little bit of a niche.
Really?
And but I was assuming that the supplier would then take my drawing,
Yeah,
and make their own drawing with make their own drawing. But no, they took my print and made their stamping from it. And so that imperfection of that one little word with that little niche in it was carried over into the samples that I got. And I checked it out with one of those, we call it a loop, when you can get right down and I wanted to check it, and I checked it. They used my artwork dead ringer.
Well,
No, I
you
wanna
must have
s-
fixed that, right? You fixed that for the
Yeah.
production design, right?
Big, yeah, I doubt that very much.
Oh, really? Because I'm looking at it. Well, I don't. I'd have to look at it, like you said, under a microscope or
Under a loop.
magnify
Yeah.
it. But
So Gary, my wife just walked in here and she said, she just said, wow, that's the guy who designed that, because it's sitting right here on my desk, sitting next to me. And she's like, tell him I'm really impressed. So there you go.
Well, thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
It's probably in one of those black blocks, I would think.
okay,
That's probably, but I don't see it.
okay.
Yeah.
So this is an Easter egg we have to find.
I just remember that I was quite astounded that they used my artwork as dead ringer as they did, because yeah, I don't.
well, congrats to you too.
Oh, is that a
Gary,
really
for,
good print?
for using a slash through the zero there. That's really computer-esque of you. I mean, yeah.
Interesting.
Look
Well, you
at
know what? The kerning on symbol here is a little off. Could that be it?
no, I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know. But I just remember that was I was just astounded they didn't make their own original artwork when they made that printing. Yeah, that's quite a confusing keyboard, isn't it?
Well, once you understand it, it's not so bad. But yeah, it's on first glance, it's certainly crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, that's what was fun about it as a kid. Yeah.
Yes.
Because every week I'd be like, I know 3 more keywords.
Yeah, there's a lot of keywords in there.
But I do have to agree with the 8-bit guy, the guy on YouTube. He says that they should have put a delete key to the right of the 0.
Maybe.
Yeah, David would have to put a picture up again. But yeah, I think where's the delete key? Oh yeah, because you have
On
to
the
do
0. It's
yeah.
symbol shifts.
Right, you have to do the
It's
symbol shift delete, right?
Yeah,
no,
they
it's
were
shift delete.
they were stuck with the
Plenty of-
Spectrum key layout, so I think that's why everything ended up where it did.
But you can easily put it, there's plenty of space over there to put a delete key over there. Huh.
Well, yeah. I'm trying to remember what's underneath there.
Yeah, it's not the
Well, the key-
designer's fault. They could
Yeah,
have
it's-
added it. Yeah.
It's the keyboard matrix, it's a 5x4 matrix, right? So to have a delete key on its own it wouldn't work with the ROM kernel. They'd have to totally.
Yep.
It's not my position to call out, hey, you guys, I need a delete key.
Right.
Yeah.
No, like I said, this keyboard is, for what it is, was heads and shoulders above what we had previously.
Yes.
That's all I can say.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Huh. Yeah.
That's awesome.
You know, there are some notorious keyboard layouts that like have weird keys, and like we just are lucky we don't have like a reset key next to the 0 or something like that to press it by accident. So
Well, and Adam, you should mention that because I remember using an Apple II at school, like when I was in maybe 6th grade or something, and that was the case.
oh
I
yeah.
I reset, and locked my programs more times than I could count.
No wonder you got the system over here, the Timex.
Well, and the brand new Mac keyboards, the upper right hand key, which used to be a delete, is now a screen lock button. So 3 times a day I'm trying to delete something and I instead lock my screen. Maddening.
That's Mac for you. Oh, no, not getting into Mac bashing.
Uh-oh, you guys Mac bashing?
No.
That was where my first computer was a Mac, was an LC Mac, yeah.
Mm.
And our whole household was Mac until my wife got into, when she got into real estate and they needed to be PC. And on PC, they had more video games than on Mac. And also I had PC at work, and then I switched over to PC.
Yeah.
I still have over here a Power Mac, an old Power Mac. The damn thing's 20 years old because I got it from work.
Well, the big thing with Mac was it was a closed environment. He wanted to keep it closed. And I mean, that wasn't the way it was in the beginning. Obviously, you look at the Apple and the Apple II, there was expansion slots in there and it was an open environment. But, once the Macintosh really came out and he had, he really closed up that ecosystem. He really wanted things to be, Apple-esque. And, that's his company. He can do whatever he wants. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing either for market share, right? Because
Well,
Apple's always.
I sure
Go
don't
ahead.
miss config.sys files or the other things that we Windows folks had to go through at that time, though.
Yeah, that was a old remnant of DOS, right? But yeah, once we finally got, what the hell was it? Was it Windows XP finally, or?
It was about then, because plug and pray was, I think, 95
Windows
and 98.
95, yeah, but it still had DOS underneath it. You could still get to DOS on those, but yeah, I think XP DOS was not. You couldn't get out to DOS. DOS was part of Windows at that point. Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
but one thing that was great about the Mac for at least a decade was the community insisted that things be in the same place, that a program was Mac-like. And if you came out with a program and it wasn't Mac-like, you got criticized. In the same time, you had Windows companies, they'd come up, 4 companies would come out with a product to do the same thing. And if anybody looked like the other guy, they'd sue him. So that was going on at the same time. So the learning curve on a Windows computer, like if you happen to have to go to a different office and use different software, it could look pretty damn strange. It was doing the same thing. And the Mac, boy, if you did something strange, they'd say, oh, I didn't really pay attention. It's not really for a Mac.
Right. And kind of in that same vein, Stuart, is like Adobe, their software, they really only made stuff for the Macs, right? Initially, they didn't make Photoshop and their creative suites for PC. So that's kind of why Macintosh got the what am I trying to say? They were for the creative types, because they had the software and those kind of things were made for the Mac. And eventually, I think Adobe said, hey, we got a big market share here for PCs. We can make more money. So converting our software to run on PCs as well, right? We'll get both markets. And then that kind of took over, I think. But still, I think, nothing against the Mac, it's a different machine, but I never really, I've got a few around just to have them, just so I can't claim ignorance, I suppose.
I have a question for Stuart. Maybe you could help me with something with Gary. You sold a lot of 2068 over the years, right? Like overstock and stuff. Is that right?
No, I did not sell many 2068s. No.
Oh, so
the
it's
only
mostly
thing
just.
the only product that I had computer wise in quantity was the ZX81s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. I was going to ask if you had feedback from users about like what they thought of the design of the system, or if anyone knows what other people might have seen it. But I guess
No,
I
no, I can't answer that. I have
Okay.
a question for Gary. It's a little more personal than technical. When you were living in both the Netherlands and Vienna, did you ever learn any foreign languages? Or you were fine? Certainly in Holland, everybody speaks 4 languages, so English is one of them. But how about Vienna? I mean, all the
No, I
engineers
didn't attempt to
learn German or
no, I had in Holland I was taking Dutch lessons actually, and in Holland if I got into a taxi cab with somebody, and if my Dutch was better than their English, we would speak Dutch. But my Dutch was not very good. But I have my wife is from Belgium. She's a Belgian girl,
right?
and
Oh, she probably speaks at least 3
oh,
languages.
she does
Or-
French, Flemish, Dutch, German, yeah. And but people did have to be careful around me for what they said because they really didn't know how much I understood. And because Flemish is close to Dutch, but I lived in Denmark for 2 years, and there I also took Danish lessons. I wasn't very good with Danish, but no, in Germany or in Austria, I didn't even attempt to take anything classes.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at languages anyway. I'm bad enough at English, let alone try to take another language.
But it's very interesting that you could have a successful participation in so many countries without having to learn the language.
Yeah, well, see, at Philips Design in Eindhoven, the official language is English.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Our director of design, when I got there, he was Norwegian. And our styling controller, when we had one, he was Canadian. And we would have a lot of designers from Germany, a lot in from England. And it was a very multinational place. And so everybody spoke English in the department. And but then out in the countryside, it's very, very common to find English. We were in a train station. It was 3 of us, and we were speaking English as we walked up to a kiosk or something. And somebody went up and asked for something in Dutch. And the person answered in English.
Yeah.
They wanted to practice English. And but yeah, that's and naturally in Singapore I didn't try to learn anything.
Oh boy, that's tough.
Like Mandarin or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of along Adam's thing, since we got a group here, I don't think anybody here really has a poor opinion of the ID design of the 2068, right? I mean, the keyboard was standing again, I think remembering reviews of the machine back in the day, that was kind of they talk about the chiclet keyboard. That's kind of the big complaint they had, but I don't think I ever remember reading a review about the machine itself being poorly designed. I don't know if anybody else here has any opinions about that.
That keyboard is such better than the 1500. I mean,
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It was really an upgrade.
Yes.
I mean, but yeah, it's no comparison to some of those. But I mean, I've got a keyboard here now. I don't know it's you almost could say it's something like the Timex one. I mean, the keyboard is so small, and it doesn't have the big clunky keys like my wife's keyboard does upstairs. And
well, I think the big thing at that point in time, and was like the VIC 20, the Commodore 64. They had real keyboards.
well, they had,
and of course they were more expensive machines too, right? So I mean, that was obviously, I'm sure, a cost-cutting measure on Timex's part to get a cheaper keyboard that was certainly not as cheap as a membrane keyboard. You just slam on the 1000. But I just don't know if anybody else remembers back then, you know, when you got your machine, if you really thought the design was poor. You know, I mean, the
Carl,
actual,
You're talking mechanical design of the keyboard, aren't you then?
well, no, I'm talking about the, not
Oh,
like withstanding the keyboard, the idea of the machine itself, you know,
Oh.
was that a poor, did everybody kind of like that
No,
design or
I think
nobody?
I think people liked it. That's why they got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Carl, do you remember the first Radio Shack color computer? It had
Mhm.
an equally
Yes,
odd keyboard decision,
yes,
and it was
the tiny
like
little chiclets.
$3.99, right? I think when it came out. I'm
It
pretty sure
probably was up there. It
it
probably
was,
was up there.
4K of RAM and $3.99, and it came out in maybe 79-ish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
Oh,
that
God.
was a,
And the MC10.
exactly. Yeah, it was
Yes.
a, yes,
Oh
it was
my
a cube.
God.
It was a cube, and it had it had, you know, smaller chiclet keyboards, and they weren't even as tall, right? They just barely stuck up out of that that
Yeah.
base unit there.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, yeah. So I, you know, I mean, that was, you know, I mean, I was a kid back then, so you know, I really didn't, you know, I just remember reading the reviews of it, and I'm kind of proud of this machine personally when I was a kid, and you know, when you read people kind of bashing it a little bit, it you know, it hurts a little. You know? But you know, I'm just wondering, you know, since we have obviously a group of people here that have the machine, you know, if anybody thinks that it could have been improved on, or you know, now that we've had 40 years to kind of
40 years. That makes me
to,
feel.
to look back on this thing, you know, I think it's still a great design. You know, I mean, I think it would be fine for something today. You know, maybe a better keyboard like David's, you know, kind of upgraded the keyboard on it, but um, and hopefully, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's making a whole new board, right? Or aren't we going to try and do a kind of like a Spectrum Next kind of thing? I mean, we haven't designed, you know, put it in a case, right? But I was kind of suggesting you might be able to just put it into a 2068 case that already exists.
Yeah. Yeah. There was Jeff Burrell was
Right, Jeff. That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. Mhm.
And you know, and then it was brought up that you know, where we, you know, there's only so many of these cases that were made, right? So I mean, there's no way we can make new ones. You know, if people throw these things away or they get tossed into the, you know, the landfills, you know, they're lost to time. I'm sure maybe at some point, sometime, somebody can 3D, you know, make a 3D model of the whole thing, and maybe at some point we can get somebody to 3D print it for future projects or generations. But you know, obviously you don't have the designs, Gary, because you know, like I said, that's a Timex thing. They own those things. You know, they would have the molds, they would have the final designs, obviously. So we don't really have anything that we could, you know, well, we have the real thing that we could measure, I suppose, and take pictures of, and you know, slice that up.
You could take an existing cabinet and put it into a program like Alias, and then you would end up with a 3D file. You can make it with the wall thicknesses and everything, and from that, you know, you could a 3D printer, but I don't know how the surface would be out like on that. But
Right. Or maybe even a resin printer, you know, but that's kind of a big machine for a resin printer.
How about
But the other
stainless steel printer?
wow, that would be fascinating. Talk about grounding the chassis out for your RFI interference. Anyway, what was the other thing Jeff was? Oh, was he the one that actually 3D printed cartridges? He made the file to.
That's a different Jeff who's going to work on that. Yes. Yes.
So at least I think we've got the cartridges maybe down, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's
And I
going
think
to send them a couple.
Because he was talking about doing those, like it says, those intricate designs that you put on the cartridges, the little, I guess it gives you something to grip it by, right? It's not just smooth plastic, you know?
Yeah, it's just to give it some interest to it, and you know, gripping, and you know,
and a place for the dirt to build up.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What can you do, right?
Listen, gentlemen, it's just past 11.
Yep.
And I have one question for you. Show of hands, how many people are interested in doing a meeting in about 2 weeks? Because we're every month is what we agreed to, but it, you know, we spent a lot of time giving Gary love, and we didn't talk about, you know, any of the other topics that we wanted to talk about. But it was totally cool. Gary deserves a lot of love.
Thank you.
But how does 2 weeks sound? Like I think that's let me just double check the calendar. I think that's the 20th. Monday. Yeah, Monday the 20th.
I'm open for that. I could do that
Okay.
personally.
Okay, I'm gonna put that on the calendar and send out an invite to everybody and say, you know, that'll be the open session where we can talk about other projects that we want to work on.
You got a lot of
Sounds good.
projects, right? I understand.
We have a lot of enthusiasm is what we've got.
You got a lot of,
And I have to say, I appreciate it, David. You know, getting Gary here. I mean, that's
Oh.
awesome.
As soon as I started talking to him, I was like, I got to get Gary with these guys. I knew you guys would appreciate it.
Yep. Well, you know, we're all, you know, some of us are older than others, of course, but you know, we're not going to be around forever. So, I mean, it's nice to be able to reap the benefits of our work. You know, like I said, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years on from when we actually did the work. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's awesome that you get to see that, hey man, something you made 40 years ago is still, you know, kicking around these days, you know.
I'm sure there's not any radio recorders that are being kicked around like this. I'm just sure of it. I mean, maybe there's a group that does boom boxes and they start talking about it, but I mean, yeah, this is one product that you guys have just taken it far and beyond or maybe what they dreamed of.
Yeah.
Or what they wished for is what you guys are doing.
Yeah, it would be actually, you know, great if we could get some of the, you know, like I said, the hardware engineers or maybe some of the software guys that
Yeah.
were working on this at that time too, because I mean, I'm sure they were under a lot more pressure than you were, Gary. I think you hit the ball out of the park when you know, they had plenty of time for the ID, and their crunch stuff was on the you know, the hardware side, I think, and the software side.
Yeah, I wish I knew any other. I don't remember any of the people in the group there. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm
Yep.
cutting y'all off. As they say at a bar, you got to go home. You can't stay here.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go, you know, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
All right.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Gary, thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.